Thanks for joining us. And today we're going to talk about, does Kriya Yoga prevent Kundalini syndrome? So first and foremost, what is Kundalini? Well, Kundalini is normally talked about as an energetic power that is in the lower chakras, in the area of the base of the spine. And the idea with Kundalini is that through certain spiritual practices, this dormant energy in the spine gets awakened and starts to rise up the spine, moving through the chakras, through the spinal centers, and leading to some sort of expansion of consciousness. And so there are some particular types of yogic paths and different practices that actually strive to stimulate the Kundalini energy. And the idea that having an activated Kundalini, of having this flow of energy moving up the spine, is actually what helps one in one's spiritual development. But we also often see that some people who practice techniques like that, it leads to this imbalance, energetic imbalances. It can lead to something called Kundalini syndrome. And so this can have all sorts of different manifestations. It can have a sense of energy that is moving through the body. So these flows of energy in the body are not necessarily a bad thing, but if they get too intense, it can lead to a very uncomfortable situation for some. Kundalini syndrome can also manifest in terms of physical ailments. So Gopi Krishna talked about some of the experiences that he had with Kundalini syndrome, where it basically had some adverse physical effects on him. So some of the symptoms of Kundalini syndrome can include physical pain, it can include irritability, it can include restlessness, insomnia, it can include psychosis. So in extreme cases, people can really be adversely impacted by too much Kundalini flowing. So if the spiritual practice the goal is to awaken Kundalini to an excessive degree, well, it usually leads the practitioner to crash and burn. And it's not sustainable in the long term at all. So some have claimed that Kriya Yoga actually helps prevent Kundalini syndrome. And certainly we see that there's a variety of different ways that different schools of Kriya Yoga practice. And so in some Kriya Yoga schools, their approach makes the Kriya more prone to a Kundalini syndrome than others. In some practices, they focus on the spinal breathing pranayama, so really trying to activate that flow of the prana, of the life force, through the spinal path. And really, that is something that Lahiri Baba, who's the originator of Kriya Yoga, actually counseled against. He said that the Kriya Pranayama, which is the mainstay in Kriya Yoga, the form of intentional breathing that brings one into a low idle state, into internalization, or what is called pratyahara, actually needs to have Om Japa as part of it. Otherwise, he said that such Kriya is tamasic. So in other words, Kriya Pranayama, done with only spinal breathing pranayama, leads to tamasic results, meaning it leads to negative effects. Hence, the arising of too much excessive Kundalini without the requisite cleaning process of the Om Japa leads to a negative results, likely to Kundalini syndrome. And so he counseled against it. And some have called the use of Om Japa within Kriya Pranayama a Kriya Yoga insurance policy, with the idea that one is silencing the limbic projections, the projections of the mind in the body through the use of Om Japa, and in that way helping to calm the mind. So the thing is that when one starts doing internal practices, everything in one's internal energetic anatomy starts to get activated. So a lot of these subconscious patterns that would normally not manifest in everyday life unless triggered will be activated when one is doing some kind of internal energetic work. The advantage of Kriya Yoga is it uses that Om Japa process to try to silence those limbic projections, to try to calm those subconscious patterns. So the main function of Kriya Yoga and why it's so effective as a meditation practice is it leads directly to internalization through a form of intentional breathing, through this Kriya Pranayama. What the Kriya Pranayama does, it actually activates the parasympathetic nervous system to bring one into a low idle state, into pratyahara, internalization. And it does this by slowing down the breath rate and the heart rate. And so one starts to be drawn inside into a meditative state. So Kriya Yoga actually has an effect on the internal patterns, what have been talked about as samskaras, the karmic seeds. And when we're talking about these karmic seeds, they're patterns that precondition the next arising of one's consciousness. So choices that one makes in life have an influence on one's future action. Hence, these preconditioned elements of the mind actually lend one towards acting in a similar way in the future. And what Kriya Yoga does is it helps to tranquilize some of these samskaras, some of these formations, especially the bodily formations, so the awareness of the body as we are habitually in the world. Kriya Yoga has the effect, through leveraging the body's parasympathetic nervous system, to bring one into a low idle state so the body starts to disappear from one's awareness. And that freedom of awareness from the body helps one to be able to see deeper in meditation. The other thing that Kriya Yoga does is it tranquilizes the verbal formations. So those are preconditioned aspects of the mind that allow one to verbalize or to use the thought and speech in an intentional way. When one is in meditation, having a chatterbox mind is a distraction from meditation. One cannot go very deep. So when one stops talking to oneself, stops using intentionality in meditation, suddenly a whole new vista of meditation opens up to one. And so one is no longer encumbered by one's thoughts. One can start to see things in a very clear way. So Kriya Yoga helps to tranquilize the bodily formation, so the body starts to disappear from one's awareness, and as well the intentional thinking, which is the applied and sustained thought. So when one is starting off in meditation, one is using an intention to get into it, but one needs to let go of that intention so that the meditation can actually blossom, so that one can start to go into those deeper aspects of meditation. The one thing that Kriya Yoga does not address is the mental formations, the tranquilizing of the mental formations. And what this means is that when one starts to go deeper in meditation, there is objects of the mind that are arising. And normally what people will do is identify with those, and they get pulled out of meditation. So a distracting thought arises that is rooted in craving, while the tendency of the mind is to latch onto it. So the methodology in some schools of Kriya Yoga is to try to become so absorbed in one's inner experiences that one blots out distractions, one suppresses them, one keeps them at bay. And in that way, the mind can be very clearly absorbed in a particular phenomena that is occurring in meditation. So trying to become one with one's internal meditative experience. So if one has an experience of the spiritual eye, for example, of this light that is seen in meditation, one tries to morph one's consciousness completely within that and becomes so absorbed that one becomes that. The challenge with this is that often what will happen is the sense of self will be projected into that meditative experience. But by identifying with internal phenomena in meditation, what ends up happening is that identification really just strengthens the conceit, the sense of self, what some may call ego consciousness, because by becoming absorbed and identifying with inner experiences, one is unable to see the true nature of those experiences, which is that they are impermanent, that they cannot provide lasting satisfaction, and that they are not a self. So while Kriya Yoga is very effective for tranquilizing the bodily formations, so the sense of body disappears, so one is not encumbered by that in meditation, for helping to tranquilize the verbal formations so that the intentional thinking mind starts to disappear, get out of the way so one can go deeper in meditation, it is not very effective for tranquilizing the mental formations. And because of that, one's attachment towards internal experiences, projecting a sense of I, is still in operation. And so the internal subconscious patterns that are unresolved, that get triggered by flows of energy, if they are not addressed by learning how to let go of attachment in meditation, this Kundalini syndrome can still manifest within Kriya Yoga practice. The remedy for that is really learning how to recognize how the mind's attention has moved away from the object of meditation, to let go of the distraction and the attachment, releasing tension in body and mind, to smile and return back to a wholesome state in meditation. And in that way, one is getting to the root of the issue, which is the internal patterns that one needs to let go of, allowing the karma or action of past choices to exhaust itself, lets go of the fetters that binds one to future karma, and moves towards one's awakening. So if you have any questions about this video, feel free to send me an email at info@modernkriya.com. Also check our website at modernkriya.com and our YouTube channel. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.